And we're singing. We're singing. Dun, 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 dun. Time to talk. Beauty and the Bitch.
Morgan.
Oh, yeah.
We have to turn this podcast around. I'm so sorry. I left my curling iron back at home at the bottom of the tower.
Do you mean that you left it in the tunnel?
Bitch, how am I confused? Tunnel and tower. What am I? A legit crazy person?
You mean the thing that goes down into the ground?
Yeah, the tower.
Like a tunnel.
The tower. Yeah, it's at the bottom of the tower. Now, my foot hurts, so I don't want to get out and go get it. It's a Win curling iron, and it's at the very bottom. Now, I bit some, glow-in-the-dark paint near the bottom.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah, so you don't get lost.
Okay.
And I also wrote some really, inspiring words as
You
well.
know, I'm really busy, but I have a friend. She's an anthropologist. She wouldn't mind.
Let's send her to the bottom of the tower
Just throw her
tunnel.
ass down there.
Yeah.
In the tunnel.
Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Beauty and the Bitch. I'm Mick.
I'm Morgan.
And today we are talking about annihilation.
Which is a word that, maybe you also cannot spell.
I've spelled it 7 different ways on 7 different things recently.
To be honest, we just went through the spelling of this when I wrote it down, and it still does not look right.
It's a weird word. It's a very complicated word.
It's very hard.
And it's a very complicated book and will be a very complicated movie, I'm thinking.
So much complication. I don't know how they're going to resolve a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of changes. And if you have read this book and you're like me, at the end you just had to give yourself a lot of affirmations like, you is smart, you is not stupid, because that is how I felt.
Well, it's a very... Okay, so... Annihilation is the first of the Southern Reach trilogy, right? It's by a man named Jeff Vandermeer, who's one of my favorite authors. Recently, I only discovered him last year.
Well, this series came out in 2014, didn't it?
It sure enough did. And you know what was really interesting about this? We might, come back and touch on this, but he put out all 3 books of the trilogy within a 6-month period.
That's crazy.
Just bam, bam, bam. Yeah. And remember in an earlier podcast episode, I forget what we were talking about. I think we had a guest here, but I was like, girl, that's how publishers want you to do it now.
Yeah.
They don't want you to come to them with one book if it's going to be longer, if it's not a standalone book. They want the first 2 or 3 immediately. So it's just a weird trend in public. I guess it's not that weird, though.
But it is reminiscent of that, Netflix, Hulu situation with the binge watching, right?
It's like binge reading. Yeah, people in today's society, and I am certainly first and foremost at the front of this pack. We don't want to wait, girl.
No.
We want to get as much as we can.
And it's frustrating when platforms like Hulu do make you wait because they release The Handmaid's Tale episodically, right? And I'm trained on that Netflix schedule where I'm like, bitch, I waited until March of 2018. I want all 8 of my episodes.
I want them now, and I want to sob every second of that show.
Pretty much, yeah.
And check.
Yeah.
Annihilation is the first of the 3 books. It's Annihilation, Authority, and Acceptance, are the 3. And it's pretty hard to explain, but I found this really good blurb online. Okay, Morgan? So, the Southern Reach Trilogy describes the 30-year effort by a secret government agency to understand an odd, pristine wilderness hidden behind an invisible border that appeared seemingly overnight. And they call this wilderness Area X.
Pretty comprehensive.
Right? I mean, that's...
As much as one can be about this sort of it's a hard to pinpoint thing, right?
This book is like a choreo poem set to polka music. You know what I mean? It's confusing.
A lot. Very.
So I read it months, maybe a year ago, long time ago.
Yeah.
You literally finished it last night.
Yeah, just the first book. So I haven't read the whole trilogy, which Mickey has. So I finished Annihilation last night, and it's a very short book, less than 200 pages. So when I borrowed this book many weeks ago, I was like, I'm going to just knock this one out. It is, for me, and for a lot of people I read on Reddit and just around on forums on the internet, that it's difficult to get through. And a lot of people go in with the assumption that, hey, it's a quick read, we'll just get through it. And then some assholes were like, well, I read it in 3 hours. And it's like, well, you know what, go fuck yourself. Because the verbiage is complicated. The whole plot structure for me, was set up where I had to often go back and reread paragraphs because, like, I would get distracted by, like, the secondary storyline, and I'd be like, I can't remember even what we were talking about.
Oh, completely. So the story in a nutshell is we follow the 12th expedition into Area X, right? There have been, well, and we don't even know. You find this out later in the trilogy. This isn't really a spoiler, but we don't know if it's actually the 12th or if that's just what they call it. It's actually like the 30th, right? Because this secret government agency has been sending these groups of people in for decades. This 12th expedition, do you think you can name the 4 women? Do you think you can name what they are?
Okay. Yeah,
it would be
because they don't go by names
No.
is a part of who they are because they need to remain, I don't know, less humane, I suppose.
That's a really interesting feature of the book, right? So instead of being called Karen or whatever the fuck her name is, our protagonist is...
the biologist.
Exactly. And you also have... Oh, I'm sorry.
They're led by sort of the psychologist. She's sort of their group leader. And then you have the surveyor.
She's like the badass.
Yeah.
She's like got military training or something. She's cool. I like her.
And then you have the anthropologist.
She was weak. Weak.
Well, she's a people person.
I guess so. And there also is the 5th member, the linguist, who dropped out before they crossed over the border.
Girlfriend did not make it. She was like, hard pass, gotta go.
She said, look, I don't understand this invisible border. I don't understand why you can't just call me Sheila. Right? She said, I'm done and I'm finished. Yeah. And then on her way out, she screamed, my name is Sheila!
And then she died.
Evidently.
Because that's the way it goes.
That's what happens. We don't actually know what happens to the linguist, but yeah, she eventually died. Everyone does. So we followed this 12th expedition into this madness of Area X. And Morgan was saying it was quite difficult to read. And I do agree with that. There's a lot of poetry. I pulled out probably one of the most difficult passages. And this comes up over and over and confuses your brain. Okay? Yeah. Morgan, see if you can... I don't even... Okay.
I'm foggy already.
But whether it decays under the earth or above on green fields or out to sea or in the very air, all shall come to revelation and to revel in the knowledge of the strangling fruit, and the hand of the sinner shall rejoice. For there is no sin in shadow or in light that the seeds of the dead cannot forgive. But whether it decays under the earth or above on green fields or etc., so on and so forth. Those were the very inspirational words that I wrote all the way down to my curling iron.
Along the hallway.
Yeah, just like a picker-upper.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that's probably one of the weirdest passages, but even the passages that aren't weird in this book, hard to follow.
You know what I think is interesting, too, is so we have this starting point for our storyline. Like you said, they're gearing up, they're going in, their expedition number 12. So we're moving forward with that storyline, but then we also have flashbacks of the biologist, our protagonist, of her background and her former life and kind of like what led her to be here. And to me, those passages are written completely differently. To me, they're like 2 different storylines. They could be 2 different authors. And I don't know what it is, but like honestly, like reading the progressive storyline, not the flashbacks, to me, it really was almost like I had some sort of like shade around my eyes sometimes. Like I had to like stay so focused on what was happening that it was almost like tunnel vision for me. And then like I felt normal.
Wait, tunnel vision or tower vision?
Oh. But then when I was like reading the flashback stuff, to me it was just kind of like normal storyline. She was like, yeah, me and my husband and like this weird stuff. And when I was a kid and I didn't really like people because it was all very like personal. And so for something about the very impersonal, like no names, no markers, like no humanity stuff, for me was like difficult. It was very difficult to get through. And not to say that I didn't like it. There was a lot of things. It took me a while to get into it. And there were some things about it that I didn't love. But, like, I did like the book. I would recommend the book. You know what I mean?
Would you go on to read, in the future, the next 2?
I would. I'm not going to do it, like, right now. But I read a lot of interesting things on Reddit that made me want to read them. But also, some people said that they prefer this book as a standalone instead of a trilogy.
That's so interesting. Well, and why did they say that? I mean, what was their...
Well, because the whole thing about this book is it's sort of a preternatural horror situation where you don't really know what's happening. It's a lot of mystery, but some people said that they think it's a better storyline when it's left to mystery than when they knew what was going to happen. You know what I mean? So the more questions that were answered, the less they enjoyed it.
So I'm interested in that because I do agree. I love literature that tries to capture that uncanny horror, right? And I think that when we get to movie talk, we're going to talk probably at length about how difficult that's going to be. Because to me, the Southern Reach trilogy, it reminds me of like House of Leaves, which, you know, is one of my favorite. I'm always looking for a book that will give me the kind of experience that House of Leaves gave me.
Yeah.
Right? Because, what's that man's name?
Mark Danielewski?
I don't know why I can't. His name is too difficult for me. Danielewski. Yeah. He's able, because it's sort of similar to Vandermeer, he's able to write confusing speech in such a way that by the, you know, you get to the end of the 10 pages of, you know, whatever, the research paper that he threw in there, and you're like, girl, I'm so fucking confused. And then it switches to a character who's lost in the haunted house and is so fucking confused, right? And that's where I'm really impressed by the artistry of these people, because Vandermeer's the same way. When the biologist towards the end of Annihilation is lost out in the swamplands, and she starts seeing things, and then there's flashes of her past life, and then garbled speech that you're like, this, I don't even think this makes sense, right? I don't think this is actually a thought.
He's like putting you in her experience.
Then I feel like I'm lost out in the swamplands. I normally feel like that, but even more so than normal. And I'm so I think that is the future of literature. It's almost like virtual reality, but in book form, in a way. And I'm touched by it. I really am. I'm not going to plug this for today because I have another good plug, but if anyone hasn't read House of Leaves and listens to this podcast, I feel like you should go out and read it immediately. Morgie, you read it, didn't you?
Yeah, so...
You weren't as big of a fan as me, though.
No, it's good. I haven't read I started Only Revolutions, which is another confusing literary project. But didn't you read one of his newer books?
I have, it's called The Familiar, and there are multiples in it. I haven't finished it.
It's a series?
It is a series. I've got, he also has a children's book.
Oh.
It has something to do, and it's dark. I mean, it's quote unquote a children's book. I would not give it to a child. Let me just talk for a second, Morty.
So Mark Danielewski, we actually were fortunate enough to go see him give a talk during Texas Book Festival Week a couple years ago in a graveyard at nighttime, and it was very cool. Ooh. And he talked a lot about his childhood and how he writes in this creepy sort of way, and that he always has, even as a child, that his parents were concerned with his like darkness.
I can imagine that. Yeah. That sword is called the 50-Year Sword.
Ooh.
And it's a scary book. But I haven't found anything that captures that madness and that darkness like House of Leaves did. The closest thing I've found so far is Vandermeer's writing. There are some other authors like David Mitchell.
Yeah, I think, Leviathan, Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas. Yeah. I think Cloud Atlas
that's a sporadic story.
I'm really interested in literature like that. So, I don't know, if you were going to rate Annihilation out of 5 stars, and no shade, what would you rate it?
I wouldn't give it more than a 4 for me on a personal level.
I feel that.
Because it was just difficult to read. Like, it was a good story, but it's like something I probably personally won't ever read again. But it was that kind of like level of writing of like David Mitchell where it feels like it's for people with like an elevated sense of reading, right? It's not for like a casual reader. So I almost felt like a little obstinate about it. It was like, I don't like to be made to feel like I'm not smart enough to read this, you know what I mean? But it did like feel that way occasionally.
Well, but I mean, that's what the expedition is feeling in Area X, right?
Yeah,
now, I'm not
true.
I can't pretend that maybe that's why he did that, because he is hard to understand a lot. But I mean, if he's trying to put us in their shoes, girl, I was at least as confused as they were a couple of times.
It is an interesting experience. And it's so great to think about it that way, that like he just wants you to feel the way the characters feel. Because I certainly felt confused.
Did you feel confused?
Did.
Could you tell if that was a tower or a tunnel? That we haven't really explained
now, that bitch, the biologist,
girl,
old Karen, or whatever name they've given her in the movie. She were confused, even more so.
So the tower/tunnel is, it's hard to describe it without using those words.
It's like one of the first monoliths they stumbled upon.
Exactly. And we don't know if it was, because this area X, is just land. Like, people used to live there. There's like a lighthouse on it, shit like that. But a couple decades back, there's just this impenetrable barrier fell around the whole thing. And then the land inside started growing like a fucking jungle, and all these weird things started showing up. And when people go in, they either don't come out, or they come out real wrong. Real, like Morgan levels. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so this tunnel tower is one of the places where the government would set base camps. It wasn't the only place. There were a ton of places.
Yeah.
But it's the current one. And the reason we call it the tunnel tower is because, and this is the madness coming in, some people look at it and see, I guess, an underground tower, which is strange.
Some people, like, just the fucking biologists.
Yeah, I guess she is the only one. And all the rest of them call it a tunnel.
Yeah, they're like, we're going into this tunnel. And, like, when she went into there, she was like, I hear what you're saying, but I have this overwhelming feeling that's actually a tower that we're, like, ascending, and we're not, like, descending into the ground.
Which is already right there, you've got that mindfuck.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, how can I... And then it makes me think of, like, MC Escher pictures.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, where do these stairs fucking go, girl? And I'll tell you what, I can't remember. Do you get... We're not going to spoil anything here, but do you get to the bottom of the tower tunnel in Annihilation? I couldn't remember which book that happened in. Okay, so we're not going to say anything, except that there is a bottom. And you don't want to get to the bottom top. You don't want to be you want to be at the top bottom. Or maybe you do, actually, depending on what your hopes are in life.
To be honest, the end of this book was one of the most confusing parts because, like, it all just happened and I was just like, okay. So...
Well, even in the book, I feel like Vandermeer had a lot of trouble at penultimate moments where you're supposed to see, you know, a monster or a being or a thing. Because the whole point of the book is this nameless, like, unnamed terror, right?
Yeah.
Even he, in the book, I felt like it stumbled at the end. And, you know, without spoilers, we can say that. Because when it was time to show the monster, it's like, well, the monster, it's just like in Cloverfield or whatever, right? Is that the shaky cam?
I didn't see that one. But it is the shaky cam.
It is the shaky. Okay, that's Cloverfield. Once you see the monster, it's still scary, but you're like, oh, it's a Godzilla knockoff. You know what I mean? Or, like, you remember, this is throwback, like, 8th grade English class.
The Blair Witch Project?
What?
Blair Witch Project?
Oh, girl, that's not what I was going to say, but that's a great example. We never see the Blair Witch, and that's what makes her scary, right?
Yeah.
I just get so scared?
I did a little bit. I got out of scary movies, and then, like, last year, maybe it was the year before, a new Blair Witch movie came out, and my girlfriends were like, we're going to see this scary movie, and I was like, yeah, we're not scared. We're going to go. But I was scared. And that shit is still scary. And you don't play with the Blair Witch, and she puts you in a corner, and you be crying, and you dead. End of sentence. That shit fucked me up.
You know what I think is one of the scariest scenes of that movie, and probably no one in the world agrees with me, but it's when they go to talk to the crazy lady in the trailer park. I don't know if you remember this. And she's talking about seeing the Blair Witch, and she seems like such a nice but very crazy trailer park lady, and she's like, and she had this thick black hair. It's just, you know, it's just running down her arms. When I just got chills. That something about thick black hair. I'm not into bears. I'm looking for a twink, evidently, because that freaks me the hell out.
Yeah.
Long, thick hair on her forearms. Get out of here, Witch of the Woods. Anyway, that wasn't our point. What was our point?
You were talking about some 8th grade throwback.
Well, I was going to bring up The Pit and the Pendulum. Do you remember that story?
I know those words, but I don't remember what happens.
Okay, I will spoil this because, y'all, it's classical literature, so don't complain. It's essentially about a man, I think, during the Inquisition. He gets thrown into a dark room, and is tortured by inquisitors. And it's completely dark, so he can't see. But he does notice that there's a huge pit in the middle of his cell, and all these things happen, like they heat the walls, they make the walls come in, and then he passes out at one point, and he wakes up and there's a pendulum swinging. I think he's tied, and the pendulum's getting closer all the time, and I think at the end of the story he can finally see down into the pit, and in fact, I'm certain Poe doesn't tell you what's at the bottom, but it's that unnamed horror that makes it scary. And I think that's always it. It's like being afraid of the dark. Being afraid of dark water, like I am.
Yeah. Oh, I read this. It was like either in the New York Times or something the other day, they did a little piece about, like, whatever the word is for, like, being afraid of, like, the deep sea.
Oh.
And it's, like, one of the most common, like, phobias ever. Yeah. They were like, you've got it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
I do 100%.
Most
it doesn't have to be deep, girl.
Pretty much, like, Everyone except for James Cameron is afraid of, like, the deep, deep ocean. Mm-hmm. He's like, I built a sub, let's go!
Let's have fun! But James Cameron's a white man who thinks he owns the world, and that's why. He doesn't think there's anything... Did you hear
that sounds amazing.
Girl, he bought that house in New Zealand. Did you hear about that shit?
No. What
he
house?
made all the locals mad.
What he did do?
Because he took over the land, and he was like, I'm David Cameron, or where the fuck...
James
Whatever. Is David Cameron a person?
Maybe it's like his brother.
I don't know. But anyway, he was like, I'm James Cameron. This is my new, like, beautiful estate in New Zealand. And had something to do with fishing or use of land or something. He's a fucking rich white man.
Yeah.
And that movie with the blue people was not good.
Titanic.
Did we make this joke last episode?
I literally don't
Whatever.
know.
Pandora.
You're talking about Avatar.
Yeah, fuck that fucking movie. Broke down shit. Anyway, okay.
Woo! Unnamed horror.
So I would probably, you know what, I'm with you though. 4.5 stars for Annihilation. I'm fascinated that people didn't like the other two books because I thought the second book was by far the best.
Well, and maybe a lot of people feel that way. It's just not like the one or two things that I read. You know what I mean? I did read, all the things I read, people liked the third one the least, it sounded like.
Well, and you know what? It's the same problem as seeing the monster, that we were talking about earlier, but in a plot way. Because he really does try to bring it together, though there's still a lot of unanswered questions, to my mind. Maybe I missed a chapter. But in Acceptance, he tries to pull the threads together, and I don't think it works as well. I think it could have just been a duo. I think the first two would have been a fantastic offering. But, yeah. And that's what's interesting about the movie, too, is the movie's a standalone. It's not part of a trilogy. They were very clear about that.
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
So Jeff Vandermeer, it's interesting to say, like, what he's compared to, and you compare him to Daniel Lewski, but he is often compared to, like, be very Lovecraftian. That's a lot of things that I read about the kind of horror that he writes about. And I have not read Lovecraft, so, like, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think you should read Lovecraft because I think you would see yourself in Cthulhu. I feel like... Do you know who that is?
Cthulhu?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
familiar.
I can never say that beast's name right, just like I can never look you in the eye.
Ooh.
Beast to beast. Yes, but... So, essentially, I have read Lovecraft. It's similar. It's that unnamed horror. Also, though, it's... Lovecraft stuff is very... connected to nature. Very similar to Vandermeer.
Yeah.
That is a trait of Vandermeer's work. His newest book, Born, which I've talked to you about, I think I've talked about on the podcast, I think it's even better than the Southern Reach trilogy. I love it. And it's also about, like, ecological disaster.
Nice.
It's what he writes about the most.
You know what else he does really well is, like, whoever does his cover art, all of his books are, like, gorgeous.
They're so great.
Yeah. So if you're going to judge a book by its cover, I guess this is a good one to do.
And, it's funny. He's been writing for years. He's super prolific. I've only just now gotten into him, and I haven't read any of his older stuff. But it seems like he really hit his, like, weird lit stride just a couple of years ago when he started writing these books. Because what I've heard about his earlier stuff is that it's just not as special. Just not as unique,
I read that he wrote a book on writing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A couple of people who were commenting in, like, the subreddit I was reading were saying if you want to understand a little bit more about, like, why he writes the way he does, he wrote, like, a book on writing that they thought was, like, pretty useful as far as, like, sci-fi writing goes.
You can buy me either the soft cover or the hard cover. I'm not picky about that.
Well.
Oh, I would definitely, he is exactly the kind of writer I would like to imitate. If I could steal some of his techniques, I would absolutely steal them.
Nice. Well, you'll have to get that book for sure.
Oh my God, I will. You'll have to buy it for me.
So, there are a lot of interesting facets about this story, for sure. We've already touched on some of the, like, weirder eccentricities. But one of the weirdest things about this book is that there's a female protagonist.
And I almost just burned it. When I opened it up and saw it, I was like, should I? And then I decided not to. I just bought it. So it seemed like a waste.
Well, to be fair, because she doesn't have a name, a lot of people begin the story confused and think she's a man. And then later, they're already invested, so they have to finish it.
That's like what's-her-ass from the Mockingbird. What's that Mockingbird trilogy they made the movies out of?
The Hunger Games?
Yeah, Hunger Games. You know that the little black girl she makes friends with?
Rue?
And all the fucking racists who didn't mean to be, but they read her and they just assumed she was white. And it says in that damn book that she has dark skin. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make a point that people are racist.
Why are you so racist, people?
Well, but it's just that thing. You read what you expect to read. And who's dominant? White men. Yeah. So you're just going to assume it's going to be a white straight man.
But no, it's a white woman.
What?
Wait, well, actually, they never said she was white?
I guess it's actually true. Yes. I don't know. I don't remember if they ever talk about her skin color.
I don't think they did. And you know what? I assumed, in my head, my perception was she's a white woman because I had already seen the buzz about Natalie Portman playing her. But you know what? Movies will taint your vision of a story too. If there's like any buzz about like an adaptation, it will absolutely change what you're thinking. So wow, that's crazy. So I don't know, but anyways, she is a strong female protagonist that's she has her own set of weaknesses, and like she's a very interesting person. She's not very like compassionate or empathetic. She's very solitary.
I definitely got the impression, I always go here. My friends are all going to roll their eyes, but I got the impression that she was on the spectrum somehow. Especially when it was talking about her scientific experiments out by that little crab pool or whatever. Yeah. And in the pond. Oh, that was beautiful.
She had like her little toad friends.
As a small child, she, like, it wasn't a pool that was overgrown, and she called it the pond. And she was meant to be a biologist because she tells stories about, like, as a small child, like, spending hours by this overgrown pool, which I would just avoid as disgusting, but she found like a whole world in it.
Yeah, like the like burgeoning life was like the only thing that sustained her. Like she was so interested in what they were doing and how they were existing, and to be honest, didn't sound like she had the greatest childhood. I mean, she found fulfillment in that, but like she kind of had to.
That's definitely the impression I got. Yeah. Too. So she might not be on the spectrum, but something about her focus.
No, I think it's interesting that you say that, because I could definitely see that for her. Yeah, because she has a lot of like personality quirks that are like very atypical. Not to say she didn't live a full life, because she did.
She did, yeah. And no spoilers. So how can I say without spoilers? You might see her again.
You might.
But I literally say might because I'm actually not sure.
Because it's so confusing. Yeah, so we've got this like strong female cast, which is an interesting kind of thing for them to do for the movie adaptation. So guess what? They didn't.
What? Yeah, they did.
Nope, they added in like all these other male characters and like made her husband like a prominent character.
Oh yeah, but they're not part of the expedition.
No, it's still all female expedition, but it's not like the lady show all day.
Oh, well that's too bad.
It'll probably still mostly be them, but
I'm not sure. Well, you know what? I heard they did. So the biologist's husband, I don't believe this is a spoiler. You find this out in the first page of the book about. The biologist's husband went into an earlier expedition, right? And then he returns kind of a shell of a man.
And like unexpectedly.
Yeah, because I think no one or hardly anyone had returned. There is one who returned from the very first expedition. You find that out later in the books. Ooh. But that's enough of that, though. So it's interesting because in the movie, not only are they going in to learn about Area X, but she specifically says in the trailer, like, I'm going in to try to save his life.
Yeah, to figure out, like, what's wrong. Because it's so hard with the spoilies, but I don't think it's because they talk a lot about it and like all the stuff I read about the movie. Anyways, in the book, he dies.
Well, how about this? In the first book, he certainly does seem to be dead.
Okay.
But I like to throw out fake hints, so don't take that to mean he's alive either.
Okay.
I'm trying to talk about it without giving any hints and being a sneaky person.
So he's gone to her.
Yes, she considers him very dead.
So,
well, she watches him die of horrible invasive cancer in the book.
Because everyone who came back had horrible cancer. Yeah. And so in the movie, the way they're portraying it is he has this horrible cancer, but she's like, I'm going to fix him. I'm going to go find out like what to do. Which the circumstances that they let her go on this expedition right after her husband has just gone, to me, is a little bit, like, murky.
And that, I think, is one of the most... this is a question that's never answered. in the books, okay? So I can't spoil anything. And also, I think we said this already, but just be very clear. Just because it happened in the books or didn't happen in the books does not mean it's going to happen that way in the movie.
It's going to be very different,
It's a very different animal, seemingly. But they never really explain... I wanted to know more about the expeditions that came before, right?
Yeah.
Because they're trying... The reason it's an all-female group is they're trying all these variables. And so they've never tried an all-lady group before.
Right.
So they're like, okay, maybe it has something to do with men. Because they literally have no idea, you know? But I wanted to know about, like, okay, well, what... Her husband's expedition, which was supposedly the 11th, the one right before, like, were they all... Writers? Were they all Caucasian? Were they all upper class? Well, I mean, like, how do you decide these things? I wanted to know more, but because it's like a shadowy government agency, you never find out what they're really working with. And in fact, I'm not even fucking sure they know. And
they have like these different roles that they, you know, they choose a biologist and a linguist and like all these things, but like, are those roles flexible? Have they tried like different expertise?
I assume they have, because I don't think her husband was her husband a biologist too.
No, he was a medic, wasn't he?
A medic, yeah, maybe.
I think he was. Anyway, so there's like all these different roles, and so the psychologist, I think, is the most interesting person that was on her expedition. And the whole thing with the psychologist was very, very trippy because they undergo all of this like training to prepare themselves and basically like dehumanizing a little bit. Like they take your name away early on in training so that you can like prepare for like what's to come. And you have to do all these like therapy sessions, and they do some like internal tweaking with the like subliminal messaging stuff. So to see the psychologist kind of like playing that role to me was very like disturbing and very intriguing. And like, how much does she know? You know what I mean?
Well, and yeah, so this probably won't be in the movie because, as we said, it's a standalone thing. The reason I like the second book so much is because it follows the man. There's a man named Control who takes over the Southern Reach, which is the government agency. And you find out, it's mostly about the psychologist, actually.
Ooh.
The second one. Yeah. So fucking good, girl.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say don't even worry about the third, but like, if
definitely read the second one at some point.
When you get through a bit more of your TBR pile, the second one I could not put down.
Okay.
And there is a moment that I shan't say for anyone, not even you, that is burned into my brain as being utterly horrifying.
Oh my God.
Look, I just got goosebumps.
Oh, I'm so intrigued now.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So the psychologist has a real story. But you know, that's one of the interesting things about the book or in the movie. In the book, we don't really find out in Annihilation like any personal details about anyone but the biologist, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But in the movie,
we suspect these things.
Yeah, because that's the whole point, right? It's like you're not allowed to talk about it. But in the movie, I know one of them is like a badass lesbian, and they've got, which is, of course, I love representation.
They give him some like character descriptions.
Yeah, which I'm kind of bummed about because I think that's going to play down the horror. Because I think it's already tense if you're like, ooh, we aren't using our names, we don't talk about ourselves, and like we've got these weird government masks on. And
that's interesting because a couple of the things that I have read as far as like movie reviews go is that like, be prepared, this movie is like a horror like you don't know, like you've never known. And to me that's so like, what do they mean? Is it like really comparable to the kind of horror that the book was? Or is it like, are they going to do some like crazy graphic thing? Like they're going to invent some other horror. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot that you could have done as far as like graphic horror with like the tunnel tower situation and like the lighthouse and like other places that they visited. It could have been a lot more gruesome instead of just leaving it like eerie.
That part where she, I think it's the biologist by herself. She might be walking with somebody. Who knows? And they're walking through like the swampy area and they hear something moving in the reed, like huge, moving in the reeds beside them. I thought that part was scary as shit, girl. Because, you know, if you're in one of those little... We think... Okay, so Jeff Vandermeer has said that a lot of his inspiration came from these swamplands around Georgia and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
like walking through the like marshes and stuff.
But it's set in the Pacific Northwest in the books, so it kind of blends the two together. But anyway, you know when you're in those like southern marshland type areas, you know there's one tiny path.
And then there's gators.
And then gators, exactly. And like, if you're not on that path, girl, you are not getting out of that swampland.
Yeah.
Right? And so that means that there's something big chasing you. You only got one path, honey.
Yeah.
And you literally cannot get off the path. I'm very expressive arms right here.
It's very scary.
Don't get off the path. So that scared me.
Yeah.
And I think they can probably hype up moments like that. Oh, and like, we won't say it, but there's something that they find in the lighthouse that I think could be very scary.
The lighthouse discoveries for
Girl.
me had me like snapping.
Girl.
I was like,
I said, what?
I did get like pretty hype when we finally got to the lighthouse. Because we talked a lot about the lighthouse. And to me, it's like really symbolic as this sort of like, it is like your point of contact. And they did use it for like referential, like spatial reasoning. Like there's a lighthouse. Here's like this. Here's this. But girl, first of all, you don't know if shit's moving around in this world. You don't know what's where, what's going on, who's what. But they were like, we're going to get to that lighthouse. And it took them forever to get to there. And when they finally did, they found some shit.
Girl.
They found some shit.
Well, and my thing was, and I get it, they're there to explore and learn. But when I was reading the book, I was like, girl, if you want to get to the lighthouse, just
go.
get to the fucking...
Just
stop
go.
poking around in every damn hole tunnel you find and just mogate. You know what I mean? Had I been on that, first of all, they wouldn't have let me unless I wore a really good wig. But I would have been like, bitches, I don't care about this. I don't care if there's some in the reeds. I don't care if that's a tunnel or a tower. I don't care what that fungus is. I don't care what you think, anthropologists. It's time to go to the lighthouse.
To be honest, no one cared what the anthropologist thought.
That old weak ass. Sometimes I look at people and I say weak-souled, and that's why I said when I looked at her in that book, I was like, this weak-souled bitch.
Yeah.
I don't have no time.
Yeah. Well, everyone needs somebody like that.
That's true. A scapegoat?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so we have already mentioned and talked about how there's definitely going to be some changes from the content we saw in the book to what's going to happen in the movies. But, like, what sort of changes might we expect, Mickey?
Well, I pulled together... Actually, this is perfect. I had a top 6 list. We've already talked about one of them. So now it's a top 5, which is much less awkward. Yes. Okay, so... okay, we kind of mentioned this one too, but I think we should hit it again. In the movie, they've got a very specific purpose. Not just save her husband, that's the biologist, but they talk in the trailer about saving the world, right? Because Area X is expanding at an unknown rate for an unknown purpose. Girl, in the books, there is... I mean, maybe that's in someone's mind, but like, you're going in just to try to survive, is the way I felt about it. And to learn. Yeah. Right?
And to me, also, it's kind of like, what's the point? Because they want you to go in to learn, but like, if nobody ever makes it back...
How are they learning?
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, what's the format of gathering information?
Well, and there is a fascinating quote in Annihilation that really threw me back. Because it was there, it's in the very beginning, maybe the first chapter, and the biologist is like, I don't really get why they took away our names, but also it doesn't make sense to name a sacrifice. And I was like, shook! I'm shook! Yeah. Because maybe, we don't know, and in fact, frankly, I'll tell you right now, you never really know. Maybe they are being sent in to appease Area X. We don't know if it's an alien. We don't know if that's some black magic. We don't know if it's Mother Earth saying, I've had enough, and like putting up a barrier. Like, we don't know. Yeah. So they could also be just sacrifices.
Interesting.
Right? Okay. So there's a much more, I mean, as they do in movies, much more clear purpose. Okay, fourth biggest difference. They talk a lot about the shimmer in this trailer.
And that shit didn't happen till the end of the book, and I even still don't even really know why we brought it up at all.
Well, and in the book, are you talking about the brightness?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I was like, is this... Because every time they talked about the shimmer in the trailer, they showed the barrier. And I was like, is the shimmer just what you're calling this barrier? That stopped you from getting to... Because there is one place you can get into Area X, obviously. They call it like the front door or some shit in the book. But it's just like a place where the barrier is permeable. But the rest of it, if you walk in, you're just... Like, you're vaporized, right?
I don't know.
It's something scary
honestly.
like that, where they're like, girl, only go in by the front door. Don't be sneaking in through no back, you know. But anyway, so, yeah, and the brightness in the book is fascinating because that's near the end.
When she's kind of like mentals.
She's gone from Mick Parker to Morgan is what she's done. Yeah.
Okay.
She is completely losing it. She's seeing monsters and boo-hoos.
But she looks pretty.
She might. I don't know. She never looks in a mirror and describes what she sees.
She'll need one.
And she's glowing, too. Mm-hmm. That's part of the brightness. So that's like madness. So I don't know. That's the question. Is the shimmer the brightness?
That's confusing. I don't know.
It is very confusing. And also there's so much that's confusing in here already. Why are they making up new confusion?
You know, they really shouldn't.
That's what I think. I mean, Alex Garland, who directed it, very, very talented, did Ex Machina.
Yeah, I want to talk about him
good.
some more.
Yes, we'll get back to him. Okay. Third biggest difference. So in the books, they don't have no technology. You can't take it in because when you walk into Area X and everything just dies, just like in Arkansas. You go back to Arkansas, your phone says, I don't know who you are or what I'm supposed to do, right? But in the movie, they've got video cameras and full technology. In the book, they won't even bring in guns, right? Because
they have like some old school guns.
Yes, like from like World War II or something. But one of the earlier expeditions, we find out, maybe did not die from Area X causes as such, but maybe died
from guns.
From violence.
Yeah. Like they all killed each other.
Yeah. Which is another big part of the horror, right? Is it makes you crazy.
Yeah.
In there, so.
Well, and also like every expedition like has like a story like what happened to them, which is also crazy to think about. Like, okay, well, if it's not really 12, if it's all these other ones, like what happened to those people?
Yeah. It could literally be hundreds.
Yeah.
Because that's just something the government would do, wouldn't they? Just to throw you off.
For sure.
Fucking government. Okay. Number 2, we've already mentioned, but bears repeating, they all have names. I'm actually really upset about this change because I thought it was such a powerful theme in the books. Why do you think they made that change to give them all names?
I don't know, because it's easier for them. Like, it's easier for storytelling purposes to, like, refer to something specific. You know what I mean?
So, like, when people are looking at us, they point at me and say beauty, and they point at you and say bitch.
Well, that's one way to look at it.
I'm backsliding. I think it might just be ease, but wouldn't it just be just as easy to be like the biologist?
Maybe because they think it gives them more humanity, and sometimes people can only grasp. It's already so abstract that maybe it's just like an extra piece of like something normal to grasp too. You know what I mean?
I think you're right. And when we talk about the drama, I think that'll come back up because that was a big thing. Yeah, to make them more relatable. I think you're right. Okay, though, number 1, biggest difference. When Jeff Vandermeer saw the movie screening, he said that the film is even more surreal than the book. I mean, really, that's mind-blowing. And he said the ending, which is very different from the book ending, he said was one of the most horrifying things he's ever seen on screen.
Which is fucking crazy.
Yeah. Because we've seen a lot of horrifying things on screen, girl.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out what...
like, where that falls, like, on the spectrum. And, like, what could it... I mean, because what happens at the end of the book is horrifying in its own right. Yeah. But it's not, like, crazy, disturbing, graphic, like, horrifying. Yeah.
Your mind is, like, slowly blown over the course of the book. By the time you get to the end, you're like, okay, mind fully blown.
Yeah.
But the last chapter only did, like, 2%.
Yeah.
Was my thought.
So it's like, to me, that's crazy. And also because the way it's been marketed, I haven't seen too much of the marketing. I didn't even watch a full trailer because I just didn't really want to get into it before I finished the book. So, like, are they even marketing it as this sort of, like, horror film? Or is it more of, like, sci-fi noir? Because that was the gist I got from, like, early things was, like, sci-fi noir. Like, mysterious, but also, like, weird.
I would, my personal opinion is that based on the music that they use, they're marketing it pretty horror-ish.
Okay.
I mean, it's definitely I see the sci-fi noir for sure, and they could have taken it completely that way, but the music they use in the trailer is very, like...
I think I'm going to watch a trailer when we're done here. I should have done that before.
Yeah. Well, you just finished the book last night. You don't want to ruin it. You never know what they're going to put in that damn
trailer.
Girl,
they'll be like, here's the end!
Right? Now come see how we got there!
Yeah.
That's the way we do this podcast.
That's interesting though. And about the director, Alex Garland, he did direct Ex Machina, which is this amazing hidden gem sci-fi movie that got, it won a lot of favor in the indie community for sure, and it got some bigger traction. But maybe you haven't heard of that or seen that, and it's one of the best sci-fi movies I've seen in the last couple of years. It was incredible. Oscar Isaac starred in it alongside Donald Gleason, and they've actually done a couple things together. They're both in the current Star Wars franchise, and they've done like several things. So it's kind of cute to see them as a pair. And Alex Garland loved Oscar Isaac so much that he has cast him as the biologist's husband in this upcoming film. And
we have no idea. I mean, he's on IMDb.
Is he like third build?
Yeah, he's like fourth build. But does that matter? Because then Jennifer Jason Leigh is underneath him. Does that mean she'll get less screen time than him?
No, it does matter. Okay. He's probably getting paid more than her.
Oh,
well, he's a man, so he is automatically.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. IMDb isn't the like official ranking, but I will be interested to see like where he might fall in the end credits. You know what I mean?
It is fascinating though. They just had to add in, man. I mean,
yeah, they couldn't handle it.
Girl,
too many ladies.
Well, and that was Paramount, who was the original. I mean, Paramount is putting this out. One of their big complaints when they saw the final screening was they were like, what was the man's actual name? Just a second. Old David Ellison. He's not, I don't like him.
Okay.
He's the man at Paramount. And after he saw the final screen, he was like, the biologist, she just isn't sympathetic. You need to cut it to make her nicer. And then, because she isn't nice. But you know what? Why does a woman have to be nice?
Right? Can't she just be like disagreeable and like a loner?
And right?
Yeah.
She's also right? I mean, fuck that. I know it's not the same thing because very different community, but they do this with fucking drag queens too. Drag is my passion. And now that RuPaul's Drag Race, which I love, is around, there's this expectation that drag queens should be nice. Drag queens have never been nice. That's never, but I think it's because they dress up like women. I really think that's a big part. And so when you look like a woman, people are like, oh, you have to be sweet. Well, fuck that. You don't have to be sweet to nobody.
I agree.
Girl, and it's good.
I agree.
Because you're failing if you're trying.
Girl.
I'm just kidding. You're perfect.
I am.
Yeah, you are.
I will say it is interesting that they seem to have given him a much bigger part in the storyline than he had in the book. Yeah. And I also don't like that they made her mission about him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because her mission was not about him. She was curious about what had happened to him, but her mission was about her life. She was bored with her life. She was looking for her own fulfillment. She had bigger questions. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And she was a biologist who had the chance to explore the weirdest biome literally on the planet.
Yeah. But it's not good enough to be like good at your job and curious.
Nope.
You have to like do it for your man.
Yeah, gotta save your man.
Yeah.
If your man is Oscar Isaac, I get it.
Girl.
He is very fine.
Yeah, but when I read, I only recently, this week found out that he was playing that, and I was like, Natalie Portman's pretty and people are obsessed with her and stuff, but oh my god, how lucky is she?
Right. So Natalie Portman plays the biologist. Do you think she's a good cast for that role?
I do. I think she's in general, I find her often a little soulless, not in a mean way, but just sure. In Black Swan, she was so incredible because she could portray this sort of soulless is the only word that I can come up with for it kind of person. And I think the biologist largely needs to be that way, right? She's very analytical and
withdrawn.
Yeah. And I think that she kind of has that flair.
This is slightly off topic. My favorite Natalie Portman movie is Garden State.
Oh, that was cute. I haven't seen that in forever, but she was quirky in that one.
The reason I bring it up is because she doesn't play. She's almost the opposite.
She's got a range.
Yeah, I think she's a good actress.
Yeah.
She's not. When I am sure she's going to be great. I like Natalie Portman a lot. When I look at her, that's not at all how I pictured the biologist. But, they always do that. She's too pretty for one thing, but whatever. Yeah. I get it.
They planed her up. They put her in a ponytail.
Shut your mouth. Is she wearing some glasses at some point?
No, they can't hide her pretty eyeballs.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
She does have those perfectly round eyeballs.
Yeah.
So. Lick them. Like the eyeball.
Now, you know, that was weird.
Yeah.
You know who they did cast really appropriately that we were talking about earlier?
Is it Jennifer Jason Leigh?
Yes, as the psychologist.
I love her.
Excellent.
Atypical is the name of that show I was talking about on Netflix, where she plays the mom.
Okay.
And she is, I think she's the star of that show,
okay.
personally. So she has, there's not a villain as such, but she plays
more or less that part.
A villainous role.
Yeah.
But definitely she's the antagonist. We can definitely say that.
Because she's instantly put in the place as, like, the leader of the expedition. So, like, there's just a lot of, like, conflict and stuff with her.
The biologists don't like to be led.
Yeah, well, no.
That's not what she signed up for. Actually, it is, but that's fine.
But she was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
But there is this, like, malicious quality to the psychologist because that's the nature of being a leader in an unknown place, right? And Jennifer Jason Leigh, she's got that. And I was telling you, she was in The Hateful Eight. She played that crazy lady that was awful and insane. Yeah. So to me, I can, like, so see her in this role. So I feel like that casting is probably, like, on point.
That blows my mind she was in The Hateful Eight, girl. Because I watched and enjoyed that movie, and I didn't even recognize her. I had no idea that was her. Okay, so what about, Miss Gina Rodriguez?
Ugh, my homegirl from Jane the Virgin.
Jane the Virgin. Now, I watched some of that, but I don't remember her.
Oh, man, I'm obsessed with that show. She is just so precious in that, and it's like it's a dramedy, but it's like very funny. Like, I'd say it's mostly comedy, but like also some drama. And so this is a really different kind of role for her to take because I don't even understand what her character does because she's the medic type person, isn't she?
Oh, she's okay. So that's and that's an added role. The paramedic.
So
that wasn't even.
She wasn't in our original expedition, so we don't even know what her deal is going to be. But we know she's not going to be like the cheery, happy-go-lucky person because that person does not exist in Area X. They would not accept that person on the expedition. So it'll be crazy to see her go from, like, bubbly Jane that, like, I know and love to, like, whatever the fuck she's doing in this.
Oh, she was the protagonist in
Yes, she's Jane.
Oh, she is Jane. Oh, I see. You know what I was confusing that with? What's that TV show where that stereotypically pretty thin girl dies and she comes back as an overweight but still very beautiful lawyer?
Sarah watched that, and I can't remember what it's called. I've never seen it.
I love that shit.
Drop Dead.
Drop Dead.
Gorgeous?
No, that's the
Drop Dead
movie. It doesn't matter anyway.
Yes.
But I confuse those two shows. And I also confuse Ugly Betty. I confuse them. I take them all together and mush them up into one show.
Well, Jane the Virgin is really good.
It's good as shit.
And Gina Rodriguez is perfect in every way.
What about Miss Tessa Thompson?
So
she's stunningly beautiful.
She's, first of all, fucking gorgeous, and it's not fair.
Holy
But
shit.
she's in, like, literally everything right now. So you know Homegirl from Westworld.
Uh-huh.
You know Homegirl from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Oh, who was she?
She played the American Prime Minister.
Like leader lady.
Yeah.
Oh, she was fucking epic.
She's epic and everything. You know Homegirl from, like, 17 other things that I can't think of right now off the top of my head. She is one of those people...
Oh, shit. She was in Creed.
Yes.
Thor Ragnarok.
Yes.
Dear White People.
Yes.
Selma.
Yes.
She's everywhere.
Really, really, really hot right now. Her career is, like, super blossoming. She's been in lots of blockbusters. She's been in some smaller indie things. She was great in Creed. That movie is, like, a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes, by the way.
Did I tell you I finally watched Creed?
Oh, did you like it?
No, but it was very good. It's just, it's just not, I just don't,
Sports.
That's not my thing, you know? But it was very well acted, and I watched it because we
did our show with Dallas.
And he was mentioning it, and the director of Creed is also the director of Black Panther.
Yes.
And it stars similar people. That man, I just done forgot his name, but he's the lead in
Michael
Creed.
B. Jordan?
Girl.
I know.
I would burn down my apartment to have sex with him.
And he's an antagonist in the Black Panther, so you get to see another side.
Woo-woo! Shirtless and mean. That's the way I like my men.
Yeah, so Tessa's everywhere right now.
Yes.
So pretty good, solid cast, really.
Yeah. There's a bunch of big names in here. the only one I'm iffy about is Natalie Portman. But I'm willing to love her. I'm not against her. I just don't know. We'll see.
Now, this movie comes to the theaters in America on February 23rd. That is not the situation that has been negotiated for the worldwide release.
Girl, they did them dirty.
Tell me what happened.
Okay, so originally, Paramount was like, yes, this is great. We love this movie. You're perfect. We'll do Natalie Portman. We're going to open everywhere, right? That's how they talk at Paramount.
Yeah.
And then, head of Paramount switched out. I don't know who to who. I don't give a shit. But I believe either David Ellison is the new head of Paramount or he's a new decision maker in the process. So they switched out. And then when they finally got to see the movie, they frankly said, I told you some of the things he wanted changed. But the bigger idea was that they decided it was too difficult. It was too intellectually difficult, demanding, and confusing. And they didn't think it would make money internationally. So, we're doing a good old normal North American in theaters, 2/23, like you said. And then the rest of the world, I think like 10, 17 days later, is going to get it on Netflix.
On fucking Netflix.
Which is... I don't know. I mean, some things do well on Netflix, right?
So
I mean, it's not like...
Lots of things
if we could have a show on Netflix, I'd be like, girl, we're moving up,
But the problem is, and they said this too, they said they have no problem with Netflix. Lots of things do well on Netflix. The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu is a very, high-profile, very expensive, very well-shot show that does incredibly well on Hulu. But... they didn't envision this for that, and they didn't shoot it for the small screen. They shot it for the big screen, so they're upset.
I think they should be upset. I would be upset, too.
You know what, though? I'm kind of upset they didn't just originally do it for Netflix, because I want to see it, but I would love to save money and just sit at home and watch it.
Girl, preach to that. But you know what? Because this is such an immersive experience, right? Gardner calls it... Oh, he had such an interesting quote about this. He said... Alex Garland, not Gardner, forgive me. He said, the film is a dream of the book. Reading the book was a dream, but I couldn't see how to do that dream, right? Which makes sense, right? That nameless horror we're talking about. But I can see why they would be pissed. Because if you're trying to put someone into a dreamlike state, the best place to do that is in the theater.
Absolutely.
It's more immersive. It's never going to be the same on your laptop. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I do feel like they got... At least they're getting their North American release, their U.S. release, though.
It's pretty crazy, though. I don't have any idea what their budget was or how much money they spent on it, but they didn't get those people for cheap, and they didn't get everything that's happening for cheap. It's a very big thing.
Alone, that's she's at least $1 million, right?
Honestly,
at least.
I don't even know if $1 million is a lot or a little to pay an actor. I really have no concept, but I would imagine for sure at least.
Girl... just real fast. On Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, a few episodes ago, they stayed in a hotel room in Dubai that was $40,000 a night.
What the fuck?
I know. That's exactly why I said I got so mad. I got so mad.
That's insane.
I said one night I could live on for 2 years.
That's crazy.
I hate these rich bitches, but I can't stop watching them though because I love them too.
Was it like a really nice hotel room? Or?
It was tacky as shit. My feeling about Dubai, I know people just love Dubai. I think Dubai is tacky. I'm coming down and standing firm. Now, is it because they throw gay men off of roofs there? Possibly might have something to do with my feelings, but it's just so much excess. To me, that's nouveau riche, and I'm not riche at all, but that's nouveau riche. You want to put gold plating on your ceiling and have a fucking bed that's the size of most people's houses. It's nice, but girl, why are you trying so hard?
Yeah.
Because if you're really rich, you're that old money, you're focused on your neuroses and not on your money, and that's real rich people, I think.
Preach, girl.
But,
Life
that's
goals.
Just me.
So there's a lot of drama with the release date and the release. So we'll see how it does in theaters because drama could either drum up lots of support or maybe it could, deter people from going to see it, frankly.
I'm a bit worried. It's going to be a flop.
I am too, actually. And Ex Machina was not a huge success in the theaters, but it was, and I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it later.
Me neither. Yeah.
And it was so powerful. So I don't know if this is going to end up being like that. And frankly, I really want to see it, but I don't even know if I'll get a chance to go to the theater. I might have to wait and see it later.
I would like to try. Let's try and see it, because I think more than some of the... Pardon me, I hiccup. More than some of the other things that we've talked about, I really want to see it in theaters. Because I think it will make a difference.
All right.
You know?
Let's make it happen.
See it. Yeah. I'll let you buy my ticket and my popcorn.
Oh, what?
Thanks, baby!
No. Well, do you have any other stray observations, things from the book or the movie that have stuck out for you?
You know, it's funny, trying to talk about it, I'm coming up against that. How do you describe Nameless Horror thing again?
Yeah.
I'll just say, we haven't ruined anything. We've done a great job of avoiding most of the spoilers. Even if you decide not to go see the movie, or you see the movie first or whatever, I really do recommend Jeff Vandermeer in general. He's doing something different than a lot of books are doing these days. And I think that if you enjoy horror or you're familiar with madness of any sort, I think these books could speak to you. Yeah, I guess that's my last bit is just a recommendation, I suppose. Really.
I like it. Yeah. Give it a go.
Yeah, you know, give it a try. And if you end up quitting halfway through, that just means you're stupid. No big deal.
It does. All right. Well, thank you for joining us over the last hour to chat about Jeff Vandermeer and Annihilation, which, again, is a word I cannot spell.
It's hard.
Will not be able to spell ever. If you want to connect with us on our lack of spelling or just, chat about this, you can reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're at BNBcast. And just shoot us a line. Keep up. Please give us a follow. Of course, subscribe to our podcast so you won't miss any new episodes.
Ooh, and write us a review on iTunes.
Yes!
That's really important, because when you rate us and write a review, it makes it more likely that iTunes will show us to
other people.
Lovely new people, right? And if we don't get reviews, they're going to throw us down at the bottom of the toy box with all the failed podcasts and Morgan's Future, just generally. And I hate to be down there.
Yeah, and that guy from the Lighthouse.
Yeah, preach though.
So, follow us there, give us a review, and you can follow me personally on my blog, morganizedmess.com, on YouTube at Literary Darlings, and... I just rebranded my Instagram to match my blog, so I'm on Instagram at Morganized Mess.
Morgandolph is dead?
No, so I saved it under a different email address in case I decided I wanted to go back, because I couldn't give the handle up.
No, it's too good.
It's still mine, but no one can have it. But yeah, fair. So I'm at Morganized Mess now.
And if you would like to check out, speaking of the YouTube world, a little bit more of what we're doing in the Beauty and the Bitch realm, spend some time with Morgie, and then pop over to the Beauty and the Bitch YouTube channel. Go ahead and subscribe and like and all of that stuff, because I'm doing a pretty intense Let's Play of Witcher 3.
He's a witch!
I'm a witch! Bun me! Having a lot of fun, and I think you would enjoy it too. Plus, we've got every single episode of the podcast there on the tubes. For your listening pleasure.
For you. And Mickey's put together some great playlists so you can check out different things.
If you just want to do the Harry Potter, instead of having to go through the feed, you can just do the Harry Potter playlist. You'll see all of our Harry Potter episodes up through, what have we done now? Up through book 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
Girl, we're almost done.
Girl. But we still got 6 and 7 to go, so don't get excited, because there's some beasts.
It's crazy.
Beasts.
Yeah. All right, so be sure to check out all those things, and let's plug a pop culture thing.
Yeah. Do you remember what the hell I was going to plug?
I don't.
Didn't I tell you? I thought I wrote it down.
But here is what I'm going to plug.
Okay, you do yours.
What I've been enjoying is season 2 of Grace and Frankie, or season 3, whatever the new one is.
The most recent is 4.
God damn, season 4.
I think it's 4, yeah.
And I've been reading... Y'all, people say some not nice things about Jane Fonda. Now, I ain't trying to stick up for Jane Fonda, because I don't know who she is as a person, but... I did read about her controversy during the Vietnam War, which I find very fascinating that people are still throwing in her face. And you know what? I don't appreciate people still throwing it in her face, because maybe she made a mistake. I'm not sure that she did. I think that she just accidentally got in some photos that she should not have been in, and because she was a nice woman in the 60s, she smiled and she took a photo, and now it still haunts her, and whatever, she makes me laugh.
Preach. You know what? I'm gonna join you in standing up for Jane Fonda. First of all, because dissent, especially when it comes to a war that we're throwing American lives away in, is not a bad thing. When did this we're getting all political. Yeah. When did this country become a country where you're not allowed to dissent? We were founded on dissent.
You can't have the opinion that is actually the most popular opinion. Like, you can't, as long as, ugh.
It just makes me crazy.
It's
fun. And this new season of Grace and Frankie.
I haven't seen the whole thing.
Okay.
So no spoilers, but I heard maybe some sad stuff coming.
There's always sad stuff, right? It's the story of two elderly women. That's a hard life when you get there. But I thought it was the funniest season so far.
I've really enjoyed, one of my favorite characters is her daughter Brianna, played by...
I love her too. She's like the mean daughter.
Oh my God. June Diane Raphael. Oh my God. Brianna's the best. And
she's my favorite character.
She's like even better every season somehow. She's amazing.
Well, what I love, just so quick, what I love about her is that she is that stereotypical like businesswoman daughter who's like a bitch and doesn't care about men or whatever. But as the story continues, she starts to pick up, like, maybe she'll have a man here or there.
Oh, and she gets a dog.
Maybe she'll have a little puppy. But she's still a hateful bitch, and I love that. I hate in movies and TV shows where they're like, now I have a husband, so I'm a whole new person.
She's just the same.
Yeah.
And she's like, to me, besides Frankie, Lily Tomlin's character,
so good.
Brianna's like the most relatable person for me because she keeps it so real. Like when shit's really dramatic and she shouldn't be like, yeah, you didn't know that my dad left my mom for his gay partner he'd been having sex with for 40 years. Like, she ain't afraid to say it. She's just like, that's life.
It is what it is. That's why I'm bitter and hateful.
Yeah. You know what it is? Nothing's too soon for her, which is kind of a mantra of my life. Like, it's never too soon. Brianna lives that philosophy.
I don't understand. Can you
like, it's never too soon to, like, joke about somebody who died yesterday. Or, an awful thing that happened. Or, like, an uncomfortable event. Like, it's never too soon to talk about that. No. Life goes on.
Why sweep it on the rug when you can pull it out and make fun of it?
Right?
Right?
Brianna.
Yep.
Love her.
And but.
Yep.
So I legit fucking forgot what my plug was. I had one. I definitively had one.
Was it like a book or like
I think it was a book. But you know what?
It's the robot.
Oh, thank you, Queen. Thank you. I even pulled up a tab for it. My stupid ass. Okay.
He just wants to plug robots.
I love robots. And when they take over, I've said this before, remember robots, I was on your side from the beginning.
They're listening.
They are. Literally, I'm talking into one. Okay, so I would like to plug this book called All Systems Red, which is part of the Murderbot trilogy. It's by a woman named Martha Wells. It's science fiction. And it's essentially about this android who lives in maybe the future, who sort of begins to become conscious while on a trip with this team that had rented her to keep them safe. Okay? And it's about her coming into her own. It is short. I think it's like maybe 150 pages, but it's big spacing. I read it. I'm going to be one of those assholes now, Morty. I read it in like 3 hours. Laid down in my bed and just read it. Now, what's really interesting about this is we very well may be doing an episode about this in the future. That's one. But then the next 2 books in this Murderbot trilogy are coming out just like Jeff Vandermeer's books came out, just months apart from each other. So I think there's one coming out in maybe June, and then the third one comes out in August. If you're looking for something just to kind of escape into, it's not like Jeff Vandermeer. It's not going to tax you. It's easy to read. I would recommend that. I can't remember if I mentioned this already, but she's also from Dallas. So she's not an Austin writer, but she is a Texas writer. So
nice. So sort of local.
So semi-local. Yeah. I mean, in Texas, local could still mean, a whole country away.
Good God.
It's a freaking huge state. But yeah, semi-local.
All right. Well, be sure to check out those things, and we will catch you next time, babies.
All right. Bye, babies.
Goodbye.
But seriously, though, can you go get my curling iron from bottom of the tower, or are you just going to be a bitch? Oh, no!
Do you have a home? Beauty in the Bitch.
You look. Beauty in the Bitch. Beauty in the Bitch.